Spring is in the air, and for gardeners, it's an exciting time to start planting and planning outdoor flower gardens. Christine Milks, the constant gardener columnist for the Seniors Association Kingston region, shares an interesting new plant trend for our gardens. Welcome, Christine.
Thank you, April.
I have been reading your articles forever and ever in the Vista magazine, and it's a pleasure to have you here today to talk about this new trend. What is this exciting new trend about gardening? Tell me about it.
I think one of the biggest trends for 2025 gardening season is going to be using native plants in a slightly different fashion, with a slightly different aberration of native plants called native cultivars or nativars. I think we'll see a fairly good selection this year in garden centers, and that's what I'm going to be looking for.
And you are a columnist for the Vista magazine, the Seniors Association magazine. Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit about what goes into those columns and what you're writing about.
Well, I try to, I hope I've been informative. I hope that columns give at least one or two little nuggets of information about something new this year, or maybe a new resource. And I've always tried to demystify gardening for people, and I hope I think it's seen that way. Gardening can be a lot of fun, and my column, I think, tries to be funny sometimes, but a little bit more informal than some gardening columns.
I want to know how long you have been writing.
April, it's really hard to believe this is my 18th year writing for Vista, and it's such a blast, such a blast.
And when did you become interested in gardening to begin with?
I married into a horticultural family, and that I think really sort of awakened some sort of an interest in me. And the other thing is, what appealed to me about plants and growing things is the history, and how plants and seeds kind of connect us through generations, through centuries. And I am totally amazed every time I see something grow from the smallest of seeds. So, and that's big a surprise to me today as it was 20 years ago or 30 years ago. It's never a dull moment that way. And I do sincerely like that connection with the past.
And I think that's what every green thumber thinks about when they think about gardening. What is the definition of a native plant?
Well, the acceptable definition of a native plant is a plant that occurs naturally. It's out in nature, and it has been basically untouched by human interventions of any sort. It's the green version of survival of the fittest in some ways. Urban gardens, especially if they're an ornamental or a decorative garden at a house, traditionally have not featured many native plants. That we want something different. We want something that we can control. We want something that doesn't look like the neighbors. So we want color, we want size and shape that's not always available when you go walking through the woods. So the new trend has been to take some native plants and to cross them with some other cultivars, some other plants, and if they've used two native plants to make this one new native cultivar, a natrivar, that's a new trend. So basically what they're doing is taking a sturdy native plant, and yet they're controlling it, maybe something that we wouldn't think we want in a suburban garden. Maybe we want something that's not as free growing, something that's a little tidier. You might pick up that trait from another plant and combine it so that, there you go, you've got a native plant, but you like the way it grows in your garden.
Some people consider those native plants as weeds. Mm-hmm. I know growing up, they were considered weeds because they weren't in our garden at all. And now, of course, through the years, that's changed. What is the big draw on having something like this in your garden? What is the benefit of having one of these plants or several of these plants in your garden?
The benefits is what we can do for the rest of the natural world with these plants, especially in an urban setting. And hopefully we're not too late in realizing that we've done a lot to destroy food sources for birds, for small animals, for the pollinators. And I think we're especially aware about what's happening to our pollinators and that we literally cannot live without them. That trend has now gone into it's moved from farms to houses. I'm grateful that that's happened. You can grow plants on a balcony in a condo building if you want to, trying to do your best to attract pollinators, and might not help you, but it might help your neighbor, and it definitely helps the pollinators. I'm actually kind of waiting to do a little tour of garden centers this year to see what's available. I think what you'll find is that you'll get the beauty of the flower, but you might get a bolder color, and you'll definitely get a more attractive appearance. Like maybe it's not going to get leggy, or it's not going to get too tall that it falls over in a rainstorm. They'll get some characteristic like that. Same way as they have done with ordinary bedding plants, like how, the petunias of your youth are not the petunias of today, that they deadhead themselves and they always stay in flower. And so I think that's the sort of thing that you'll see happen with these native cultivars, these navatars.
And the navatars, are they perennial? Nativars
They can be. And you'll find big propagators like Proven Winners. They've got, nativars in annuals, in perennials, and then in shrubs as well, so that you can do a lot with your yard.
How do we know, and where do we get these Proven Winners for this year coming? What do we need to be aware of?
I assume that Proven Winners will not be the only one that will have a lot of these new plants to market this year. But Proven Winners is one of the biggest plant propagators. And as I said to you earlier, if Proven Winners can patent the plant, then they're going to grow it. And so they do have strict labeling on their plants so that you will know when you go into like a garden center, if you see Proven Winners and if you see their nativar or native cultivar labels on their plants, you have the assurance that that is so. Their definition of a native cultivar is that they have used only native plants to combine to make that unique item. If the plant that they've pulled a trait from to move to a native plant, if that plant is not a native plant, they will not label that outcome as being a native cultivar. They're very strict.
Christine, I am now wanting to start looking for these new plants coming up.
Road trip.
Thank you. Thank you very much for being on the program and sharing giving us that information about the new trend in plants coming out.
Truly my pleasure. Thank you for asking.
People can get a hold of you by emailing the Seniors Association?
Yes, and sometimes I get the most interesting emails now and then from readers of Vista. I'm happy to answer any questions. If people are running into gardening problems, if I don't know the answer, I can usually find an answer, and I welcome that.